Hi, my name's Rachel Knox. I'm the HR Compliance and Training Manager here at Central Oregon Community College. I've been at COCC for a lot of years in a lot of different roles. During the time that I've been at COCC, I have been the circulation manager at the library, the assistant director at the bookstore. I have been a program manager for professional development for community learning. I've been the apprenticeship coordinator, and now I am here in HR and have been here since 2021. So I have had a lot of jobs here at one employer, but I have also worked a lot of other places. I did HR for a long time as a store manager for Barnes and Noble, and I worked in 3 different states for Barnes and Noble and opened the store here in Bend. I got probably an average of 5 to 10 resumes a day when I was working at Barnes and Noble. And this was way back in the day when people would bring in paper resumes. I did hundreds and hundreds of interviews when I worked for Barnes and Noble. I've also worked for a lot of other employers. I interview fairly frequently for jobs. I apply and interview for jobs just as kind of a routine. I like to look at different options. I love to think about whether I'm in the job that is right for me at this particular point in my life. If this job that I currently have is in line with my values, do I want to keep moving forward on something? And fortunately for me, COCC has allowed me lots of opportunities to continue to move forward. This is also really important for business communications because what I'm going to talk about when I talk about HR, human resources specifically, and we'll talk about the different categories of business communication under HR, is that piece of being in line with your values, pursuing a career that is right for you, and not just taking jobs as they come up. So one of the reasons, probably one of the primary reasons that I am still at Central Oregon Community College is because I really believe in the mission of COCC. I believe in affordable education. I believe in career and technical education. I believe in transfer education. So education is a core value for me. So that's how COCC really aligns with what's important to me. There are some other things that are very important to me in a job. And again, COCC has allowed me to be able to stay in alignment with those things that are important to me in my work role. I know that a lot of you are pursuing transfer degrees. I'm guessing probably some of you are in career and technical programs. You may be in an automotive program, a manufacturing program. You may be pursuing something in the business field or EMT. You could be anywhere. So I get that there's going to be a lot of variation in the audience that is watching this. There will be something of value for you here, I promise. So watch on and pay attention for what's going to have the most use for you. We are going to start looking at business communication from a human resource lens, and we're going to talk about how business communication is different from other types of communication. This is the piece where I really miss being in person because at this stage, I always ask the folks in the room to tell me, what is the difference in your mind? What's the difference between business communication and other types of communication, like the communication you might have with a friend or a family member or a girlfriend, boyfriend, spouse, partner? How does that communication vary from business communication? Some of the answers that I often get are business communication needs to be more professional. It needs to be specific to whatever it is that needs to be done for the business. So let's say you've got a job as a medical assistant You are going to be talking about medical assisting topics at work, and you need to stay focused and directed towards those topics. Other types of communication, again, with a family member or friends, you may be talking about random things going on in the world. It could be politics. It could be stuff you saw on social media. It could be a series you're watching on Netflix or videos that you've seen on some social media platform. You could be talking about music or where you're going to go to eat. These could be conversations that don't necessarily have a really clear purpose. You might just be kind of wandering through the conversation or telling a story. The difference between other types of communication are kind of daily social, family member communication, is that there is a different set of rules and guidelines for those communications. There's a different purpose behind those communications. When we look at business communication, we're really thinking about focused, purposeful conversations that are important to reach an outcome. So take a minute and just think about how those two things are different. Let me use an example. Okay, you are at home with a friend and you're telling a story about how things were really challenging today, and you're meandering through the story and you're talking about how this person did this thing and that person did this other thing, and it's all from your perspective because you're you. It happened to you and you are describing this for someone else to hear. Through that conversation and in that communication, you can take tangents. You can go off over here on a tangent and talk about, oh, during this part of the conversation. Or you can take another tangent over to another side and talk about a different part of what happened. You may get interrupted. You may answer a phone call. You may send a text. You may say, wait, never mind. I don't want to tell you the rest of the story. Okay. All of those things, totally fine, happen all the time in our personal communication. When you are at work, you are communicating about specific things and for specific reasons. So your communication, by its very nature, needs to be different. So let's talk about one of the most important pieces of business communication. And especially from an HR standpoint, I see this a lot. People are not always super clear on what concise business communication is. If you're not familiar with the word concise, I'm going to define it with some examples here. But before we start to really dig into what concise means, let's talk about what it's not. So, it's not what I just described about you telling a story about something happening during your day, getting interrupted, sending a text, dropping the story altogether, and moving on to something else. So general communication can sometimes be meandering or vague. It can be goofy. It doesn't necessarily always have a purpose. It can be long-winded or unclear. Concise business communication is specific. It is clear. It's to the point. It's on topic. It's accurate. It is well prepared, understandable, and appropriate to the audience. So let's say that you are an EMT. I'm just going to take that as an example. You are an EMT right now. You're a student, but soon you're going to be graduating, going out there to work in the world of emergency response. So you're an EMT and you're helping a patient. So you respond to a call, you show up, this person is alert and aware, but they're having a medical issue, and you start going through with a lot of technical detail about what is happening to them. This is a vasovagal event, and this is happening, and this other thing is happening, and they're already a little concerned and maybe not thinking clearly. They're not going to understand what you're talking about. So that's why appropriate to the audience, EMTs are generally trained. Here's a way that you can help somebody calm down. It might be a tone of voice. It might be slowing down the pace of how you're speaking. It might be using terms that are clear to a general audience. So be thinking about when you're communicating at work, am I communicating in a way that is appropriate to the audience? Let's say you're working in a technical field. Maybe you're heading down an engineering path and you're going to be an engineer and you're working in the office and you're working with other engineers. Well, you want to use your technical language. You want to be accurate and specific, and you know that your audience is peers who know a lot of technical terms. You're going to want to use those technical terms. So when I talk about being concise, it means that you are using the appropriate language for the audience, but you're using just the language you need, not too much and not too little. So you might also notice as you're looking at this slide, there is a word in this description, concise business communication. It's specific, clear, to the point, on topic, it's accurate, it's succinct. So the word succinct, if you don't know it, get familiar with it. So succinct and concise are very similar. Both of those are great words, and those are some of the most effective things that you need to keep in mind, being succinct, being concise, as you are preparing for business communications. And this is going to come into play with what we're going to talk about next, some of the business communications that are HR related. Okay, so types of business communication specific to HR, that's kind of getting a job, that's going through a recruitment process, that's looking for a job, networking, and then interviewing. Okay, all of this looks like it's the front end of getting a job, but part of the reason I introduced myself like I did, I've had a lot of jobs here at COCC, I've got a long employment history. I introduce myself that way to just let you know that you are likely going to change jobs multiple times in your career. And that is a good thing. And that can be at the same organization or it can be at different organizations. You can even change fields or change your career path, the sector that you work in multiple times. But you always want to be thinking about the threads that go through everything. So the things that stay consistent throughout your career, because that's what you're going to build on. And if you're new to your career, then we're going to start looking at what are you taking from your past experience, whatever it's been. That could just be education. You might have waited tables. You might have worked at a fast food place. You might have cleaned houses or done landscaping. All of these jobs, while they may not be directly in line with your future career, there are still really important competencies that you can pull out of those jobs and your skills and abilities that you can apply to a LinkedIn profile, to a resume, and to an interview. Let's start by looking at a LinkedIn profile. So I'm not going to go into great detail about how to technically design a LinkedIn profile. If you are heading into setting up your LinkedIn profile, it can be super helpful to just Google, how do I set up a LinkedIn profile? And find a YouTube video. Find a YouTube video that is high quality, and probably at this point in your educational career, you know how to decide between kind of good internet content and not so great internet content. But find a good YouTube video about setting up a LinkedIn profile and just take a quick look at that. It's not hard. Technically, it is very easy. You can set up a LinkedIn profile for free. And LinkedIn is really helpful for a networking piece, but it's also what I like to think of as your digital resume. So why do I start with a LinkedIn profile? Well, I start with a LinkedIn profile because this is one of the simplest ways to start making your resume and get a really good baseline for what's going to become your resume. Some essentials for a strong LinkedIn profile. Okay. You have got a handout that has this on there. So if you've got that handy, pull it out. And if you've got a pen or pencil and paper in front of you, or you're going to type some notes, here are some essentials for a strong LinkedIn profile. It can be skimmed in 30 seconds or less. Okay. What does this tell you? Remember that concise and succinct that I was talking about? This is what it looks like for a LinkedIn profile. You can skim the profile in 30 seconds or less, and you can get a clear understanding, a focused and purposeful understanding of what the person, this LinkedIn profile, what this person is about and what kind of job they either are doing now or what kind of job they are wanting to do. So, a professional headline is 120 characters or less. It lists career focus and components of work. It includes industry related keywords, core skills, competencies, strengths, talents, and interests. Okay, we're going to talk more about competencies, but I want to go back to that industry related keywords. You are in the perfect spot right now while you are in school to be finding industry related keywords through your training. So if you're taking specialty courses, let's say you're a certified nursing assistant or nursing student, if you're taking courses that are related to nursing, you are getting industry related keywords. And those are specific things that you are going to want to talk about in your LinkedIn profile, on your resume, and when you go for an interview. So you're paying attention as you're going through your education and finding those industry related keywords. Let me give you an example. So in HR, one of the things that I know for sure across the board, and one of the things I like about HR is there are a lot of different areas. So there's recruitment, there is performance management, there's professional development or learning and development, there's employee relations. A lot of businesses will have HR business partners. I read a lot of job descriptions for HR jobs just to see what people are looking for and what are important both in public sector. So like where we are here at COCC, we're a public sector job because it's sort of under that large government umbrella. Private sector jobs, though, sometimes those will look really different. So I'll look at an HR job description for, say, a tech company in the private sector, just to see what are some of those industry related keywords. So when you start this process of preparing a LinkedIn profile and preparing a resume and getting ready for an interview, you are going to want to know your industry keywords. You are going to want to know what's really important for the job that you are trying to get. And you get that information from job descriptions and from job postings. Okay, again, a really good and effective LinkedIn profile is well written in a professional style. And this applies to everything you do whenever you are applying for a job. So well-written professional style means that no spelling or grammatical mistakes. You are not using text abbreviations in your LinkedIn profile unless you are actually looking for a job where that's appropriate. Like if you're doing super cutting edge, work, or you're in a super creative field, then you may be using some different types of spellings, or you might be playing with language a little bit more, but you want to make sure that it is specific for what you want to get. Misspellings on LinkedIn profiles, misspellings on job applications, misspellings on resumes, no good. Okay? Don't do it. A quick word about artificial intelligence and looking for a job. In the world of work right now, oftentimes the employer that you're applying to will use some type of software application for their recruitment process. An example would be Workday. So, Workday is an application that is used for recruitment. What that means is that, let's say you're applying for a job at St. Charles Hospital. Their HR department may use Workday as their recruitment application. You land on the St. Charles website, you find a job that you want to apply for, you click apply now, and you go into their software application, could be Workday, to apply. Now, within that application, it may be asking you to just fill in certain text boxes. You may be putting in your name, your address, your email, your phone number, et cetera, et cetera. It may be asking for your education. It may be asking for your experience. They may ask you to upload a resume. A lot of times, businesses don't even ask for a resume anymore. So again, this is why I have you start with a LinkedIn profile, because everything you put for education and experience on a LinkedIn profile is also going to work if you do create a resume. It's also going to work for when you're applying in application software. So if we're using, say, Workday and we're applying at St. Charles, we could take the information that we put on our LinkedIn profile and cut and paste some of that right into Workday. Now, there may be an opportunity for you in this application where you're applying for a job to upload a cover letter. And you think, well, gosh, I'm going to shortcut this. I'm going to make my life easy. I'm going to go to ChatGPT and I'm going to let AI help me write a cover letter. There's nothing wrong with that. By all means, try it out. See what you get. However, if you cut and paste that wholesale, like you just take the whole thing and you cut and paste what GPT burped up for you, and you drop that right into a cover letter, or you drop it right into an application online for a job, that may not sound at all like you. It may have errors in it. It may be non-specific. It may not be at all what you want. Anything you use AI for applying for a job, you need to read it and edit it very carefully. A lot of times when I'm using ChatGPT for something, I will find that it gives me way more words than I need. Not concise, not succinct, and not specific. Okay, so you can use ChatGPT to maybe help you flesh out a resume or start a cover letter, but don't use everything you get there. Use your critical thinking skills to go through it and edit it and make it yours. And you want to add your voice. So if you've taken any writing classes, you know what I'm talking about with your voice. If I write something for, say, my colleague, they're going to want to read it through and they'll probably rewrite some things because there'll be things that sound right for me, but they don't sound right for them. Same with any kind of AI generated writing. So make sure that you are using these tips. Be concise, be accurate, be specific in everything that you're writing for HR business communications. And that means your LinkedIn profile, and it also means your resume if you end up creating one. So oftentimes, again, in those software apps, when you're applying for a job, you will have an opportunity to upload a resume. That's not a bad idea, okay? Even if you've put all of your education and your experience into the application itself, it has probably text boxes where you can enter all of that info. Even if you've done that, having a resume is really valuable. What you see here on the screen is probably my favorite basic modern template for a resume. It gives your name in big bold letters. It provides an address, a phone number, an email. So if somebody prints out your resume and separates it from your actual application, they still have all your contact information. Never include a photo on your resume unless you are required for some reason, like you're modeling, you're applying for an acting position, and it is specifically requested that you provide a professional headshot. Don't put a photo on your resume. I don't care how cute you are or how much you think this is going to set you apart. Don't do it. It's not a good idea. Okay, that first piece that you see on the screen here, this objective piece, that is really important. That's where you are clarifying why you want this job and why you are the person they should choose for this job. So let's go back to the LinkedIn profile. Right here, you've got just kind of the top of my profile. Below my profile, if you go to LinkedIn, you can find me there. You will see that there is essentially a very brief summary of who I am, what I do. It doesn't talk about, I love dogs and I've got kids and, I want to hike in the mountains. That is not the place for that. Sometimes there is a place for that, but generally speaking, on these business communications, that's not useful or appropriate. So, on the objective for the resume, you are talking about why you're a good fit for this job, why they should choose you, and why this is really in line with your career and your career goals. You're going to make sure that you've got your education here. You're going to list any experience you have. And I'm going to talk more about experience and kind of how to connect past experience with where you want to go in just a few minutes. You're going to bullet some skills. Again, we're going to look at this a little bit more in just a minute. And then you might put in some activities. Generally speaking, these are not your leisure activities. These are activities that are directly related to the job you're trying to get. Let's go back to the example of the EMT. All right, so let's say that you want to get a job as an EMT. A lot of times in that particular program, they're doing practicums or clinicals, and they've got connections. They are building a network right there. And so they're going to have a way to get connected right away to a job. But if someone is perhaps taking our EMT courses here in Central Oregon, and they're going to move over to the Valley, and they don't necessarily have a network over there built up, they may list some activities here. Like they may list specific things that they did. Maybe they did some volunteer firefighting, or they have worked as a CPR first aid provider for some races in Central Oregon or something like that. So those are the specific activities that this person may want to list. If you're applying for a job like an EMT or say, a firefighter, maybe you want to do some wildland firefighting, you may also list some activities like rock climbing, or you might be an ultra marathoner. Like these are some activities that, again, they speak to physical qualities that might be required for the job, but also kind of give you a little more dimension. If, however, you're applying for a job where you're going to be primarily indoors and you're going to be serving customers, you're going to want to think about more activities where maybe you volunteered at the Humane Society. And so you've had responsibilities that you've had to carry out, and you can demonstrate that in the list of activities. So it's not necessarily a job that you've done, but it's an activity that you've done that relates to a position you may be applying for. Okay. It can be nice to see a little bit of humanity, like a little bit about like, what does this person like to do? But use that very sparingly. Okay. This is not the place where you want to get really big with your personality. So this is a general overview for a good basic modern resume. I do highly recommend that you keep this. It may look identical to whatever you've put on your LinkedIn profile. It may be slightly different, but both your LinkedIn profile and your resume is great to have because it means you don't have to recreate the wheel every single time you apply for a job. So let's say you've got 3 jobs that you're interested in, and you open up their application, and it's got all the stuff you need to enter, your education, your experience, and every single time you have to go through and be like, okay, what did I type last time? And you have to type out, okay, I went to COCC, like when did I start? And you have to, go digging. If you have an up-to-date and accurate LinkedIn profile and an up-to-date and accurate basic resume, you have all of that information in one place, and you can just go there and grab it and drop it right into an application. Makes that work super easy. Okay, now I said that we would talk about, let's go back to this really quick, skills and some information on experience. Okay, let's talk about experience first. And we're going to look at now some competencies. I have done a fair amount of coaching with folks who are looking for jobs and their early career or they're changing careers. Maybe they've had a lot of work experience, but they're no longer doing the job that they were doing. They want to move into a new area. And they're like, okay, I have just spent the last 6 years of my life doing fundraising for a nonprofit, and I'm done with that. I want to go on and I want to do something totally different. I would like to work in the banking sector. Okay, totally viable, no problem. When recruiters, so I will talk about this now from the HR professional side. So, as an HR person, when we get applications for jobs, we usually have minimum qualifications that people have to meet. And depending on the job, it can really vary. Sometimes it's specific to you have to have a AA, an associate of arts degree, or an AS, an associate of science degree, or you have to have a bachelor's degree in XYZ, or you have to have a master's degree in XYZ. If you're moving from, let's say you've been working as a professional in one field and you're moving to a totally different field, you may not have all of that education that they require. So you may not meet the minimum qualifications. A lot of the time, they'll give you an opportunity to provide an equivalency statement. So how your experience is equivalent to the education. That's a great opportunity for you. But let's go back to that example that I gave you, where someone is moving from one career to, let's say, banking, and the banking job is saying, we want you to have X amount of experience with customer service. It might be a supervisory role, so you have to have 2 years of experience supervising other employees. You need to have experience working with a highly complex banking systems, all right? And you are coming from a background that is not banking. How do you work with that? And how do you make that jump? Well, competencies are the way you can make that jump. So you're reading the job description and you're thinking about your experience and you're like, gosh, these two don't match. I've provided a list of competencies and in a couple of different formats. And this is a great way for you to think bigger picture. What do the tasks that I was doing, so maybe the tasks you were doing were not at all like the tasks you might be doing going forward, but the competencies you needed to do those tasks are directly relatable to the tasks you'll have to do in a new job. So, excuse me. Let's look at this one. So, customer service completes job duties with professional behaviors, interactions, and attitudes. I'm just reading that top bullet right here under customer service. So, the job duties are not specific here, but you can say that in a previous job, you completed your job duties with professional behaviors, interactions, and attitudes. And you can speak to those things specifically. And you can now start to relate those things to what you'll be doing in your banking role. Okay, so you're going to try and get a supervisory position in banking based on your previous experience. You don't necessarily maybe want to start at the base level. You don't want to be a teller. You want to go in and you want to do something a little higher level. So you're going to talk about your past experience and how that directly applies to the things that are on the job description for the job you want to get. These are some examples, and you can use some of this language straight off of here. So the information that I gave you, like, again, don't reinvent a wheel. Don't try and like think of something different. This is like early stage artificial intelligence. Okay, I'm giving you stuff you can use. So when you're thinking about, I want to write my objectives, or I want to write my information about my experience, okay? And I'm going to talk about, I did a job where I exhibited professional behaviors, interactions, and attitudes day in and day out. I provided high quality work in X, Y, and Z. I was reliable, timely, and attentive to relevant details. Okay. These are words that you can use, phrases that you can use, as long as they are accurate and true to your experience and your abilities. You can use these for your LinkedIn profile, for your resume, at an interview. Okay. Let's look at some different competencies here. So some of you may look at this and you're like, wait, I'm looking for kind of a technical job. And like, this really sounds like you're talking about, an office job, like banking. That is, that's not what I'm looking for. Well, I have done a lot of work. So you may remember that I was the apprenticeship coordinator here at COCC for a period of time. And I worked a lot with construction employers. And construction employers would tell me over and over again, like, we need people who can be adaptable, who can be flexible, who show up on time, who can look me in the eye, who can articulate after I've told them what I need them to do. They can say, okay, I understand. You want me to do X, Y, and Z. Okay. These are basic skills. This isn't like, okay, super technical, like I need to, go get the pin nailer, I'm going to do some finish work inside this house and I'm going to do this and that and the other thing. Your baseline best skills are these professional competencies. So as we're looking at what's on the slide here, let's talk about business acumen competency. Some of these things won't apply to you specifically, but some of them will apply to someone else. So someone who is getting a business degree, for example, the business acumen competency could be one where someone's going to go in and they're going to talk about not just their skills, but they're going to look at the business that they're applying to, at the job they're applying for, and they're going to talk about like, hey, I did some research. I looked at your website. I know your mission and vision, and I can talk about in my interview about how your mission and vision really applies to my mission and vision for my career, how we are aligned, and how I am going to, on the daily, make decisions that align my work to support the mission of your business. Okay. What I've just done is I've just basically looked at that first competency on the screen, and I've started to talk in those terms about how I'm a good candidate for the job by applying the competency. Again, not everybody's getting a business degree. So I also have the growth mindset competency on here. Huge. If you went through Bobcat orientation and you had a growth mindset session and you attended that, you already got some of this. But I can tell you 100% as somebody in HR who hires people, sees new people coming on, as someone who has hired a lot of people in the past, and as someone who works with other employers, the growth mindset competency is huge. That is someone who comes in and is ready to work. So it doesn't matter if you're an EMT, if you are a medical assistant, if you are an artist, you want to be self-employed. You want to start your own business. The growth mindset competency is huge. The world is constantly changing, and being able to adapt to that constant change, not getting stuck in like, well, I've learned my job, that's all I need to know, that is really going to be a struggle for you. So that ability to be curious and be adaptable and be flexible and kind of just understand that everything is going to be different. Like days will be different, things will change, and that's okay. I'm going to go with it. I'm going to learn, and I am all right with that. So the growth mindset competency, again, that could apply to any one of thousands of different jobs that you may be applying for. So why have I just gone through all of this information about professional competencies? Because that is your foundation for when you're writing your objective, when you're writing your introduction in LinkedIn, when you are speaking to your experience, your job experience from the past, when you are crosswalking your previous job to the job that you want to have, when you're talking about your skills. So on this resume template, under those skills, you can actually list specific competencies there. When you're talking about your job experience, again, concise and succinct is your friend. If you look at this resume template, there is not a lot of space on here for you to write paragraphs and paragraphs of information. So what you're doing is you are pulling out the most high impact words. You are communicating the most important information concisely and succinctly to your future employer. And how you do that is by going to these professional competencies, finding words that make sense for the job you're trying to get, and using those words for your LinkedIn profile, your resume, and for when you go into a job interview. All right. At this point, I'm going to give you a little bit of information on job interviews, and I won't go into this in any great detail, but just know that job interviews for most people are nerve-wracking. I know very few people who are not a little nervous when they head into a job interview. And when I'm doing interviews, I expect people to be nervous. Like I don't want them to be uncomfortable. But someone who is a little nervous, it tells me that this matters to them. Like they're here because they actually care about this. Someone who comes into a job interview and kind of drapes themselves in a chair and doesn't look me in the eye and is not really engaged in the process, well, they're giving me a pretty good message about how much they want this job. So again, professional communication when you go into a job interview. These competencies are incredibly important when you're heading into a job interview. I have never in my entire career gone into a job interview that I didn't prepare for. And that includes the job interview that I did just a little while ago. So I did a job interview not long ago because I actually wanted to go through the process. It's a good way for me, again, to stay fresh. I'm super happy in my job here. I don't want to leave, but it's a really good way for me to stay up to date, and why I can actually speak about this because I know I've done job interviews recently. So when I was preparing for that, I was like, oh my gosh, I've done this so many times. I don't want to prepare for another job interview. But it is really, really important to do. You want to show up, you want to be ready. Oftentimes, if I'm preparing for a job interview, I look for a time when, maybe I'm driving to Sisters or I need to head out to Prineville or I need to drive somewhere. Like I'm in the car by myself or I'm at home by myself. And I ask myself job related questions, like interview questions that are specific to the job I'm applying for. And I answer them out loud to myself. Yes, you're probably making a face at this point. You're like, that's ridiculous. I can't believe you're doing that. There is no substitute for that. You can also record yourself. So if you want, put in your earbuds, ask yourself a question, and then answer it, and then listen to your answer back. You will notice that your first answer, the first time you run through it, you're probably not terribly concise. You're probably not terribly succinct. Okay, so that's a good indication that you want to front load your answers with clear competencies. Okay, let me give you an example. I get a question that is, tell me about a time when you have had a difficult interaction at work and how you worked through that. Okay, here's my answer. There was a time when I had a customer come in who was very upset about a policy that we had in place. And they were upset from the very beginning. They were yelling from the moment they walked in the door. The first thing that I did was I made sure that I was okay. I knew, like, I was grounded, I was present, I was listening to what they had to say, and that was really important for me because I didn't want to get defensive. This person is having a bad experience. It's not about me. So I just want to be able to be available to hear what they're saying. As soon as they finished speaking, they took a break, took a breath. I said, I hear you. You are really unhappy about this. Let's see what we can do. And then I proceeded to go through the established procedure for addressing a customer complaint. But the first thing I had to do in that situation was de-escalate. I had to help that person calm down. And it wasn't by telling them to calm down. It was by telling them that I heard them, that I knew this was important to them, and that I was going to help them get resolution. Okay, that's one way to answer that question. There are a lot of questions that will come up in interviews. Some of them you may have experienced before. They're going to feel like trick questions, but you want to be prepared for them. They're not trick questions. These are really specific questions that an employer is asking because they need really important information from you. And if you are not prepared to give them that important information and to speak to your competencies, then you are going to struggle. In that example I gave about a difficult customer, I was talking to my customer service competencies, okay? I was solving a customer problem using sound judgment, and I demonstrated that by saying I used our policies for the business to work through the disgruntled customer incident. Okay, so again, use the information that I've provided in the professional competencies, become familiar with those. By all means, do not memorize them. Okay, they're not there for you to memorize, they are there for you to use as a tool. And the longer professional competencies, the document that looks like the one on the screen now, is for you to go through and pick out one or two that you feel like, oh gosh, yeah, this is really important for the job I'm applying for, or this was something that I did super well in a job that I used to have, and I can absolutely speak to this. Okay, with that, I have covered a lot of ground, and we have talked about LinkedIn profiles, resumes, interviews. I'm going to go back to this. More than anything else, be concise. Be concise does not mean giving short answers. If that's what you heard, you kind of missed what I was talking about. So go back to the beginning. But being concise really means being specific, being clear, being to the point, on the topic, being accurate, succinct, well prepared, providing understandable answers that don't meander all over the place, and answers that are appropriate to the audience. Because if you're sitting in an interview or you are filling out an application for a job, you know your audience. It's the person behind the computer who is looking for a great employee, and you want to tell them how you are going to be that person. Thank you so much for your attention. You have got my contact information in Canvas. I believe that Judy will have provided that for you. Again, my name is Rachel Knox. Last name is Knox. You know the COCC website. You can find me on the COCC website. You are welcome to contact me. Just this week, one of Judy's graduates from this business communication class reached out and wanted to meet with me about preparing a LinkedIn profile and getting ready for interviewing. We had a 30-minute meeting, and I helped her walk through kind of what the steps would be. I am happy to do some of that coaching for you if you need it. So don't hesitate to reach out to me if that's helpful. Thank you so much for your attention. Good luck in this class. And if this is your last term at COCC, congratulations. I hope to see you at graduation. I will be there. If this is one of your early classes at COCC, keep going. It is worth the work. Thanks so much.